Well, the Gilmore Car Museum was started in 1963, and actually just as a private hobby. Donald Gilmore was given a car by his wife, a 1920 Pierce Arrow, and started restoring it at his home. Before long, they had a little military tent, worked outside underneath that tent, and thought, this isn't very warm, let's find something more suitable. So Donald Gilmore came up the street and bought 2 farms and built this building, which is the carriage house, to display cars in, and built a machine shop here. So this is the very first building that was built as part of his collection. And that was in 1963 when he got his first car. By 1966, the museum opened to the public as a nonprofit. They had already gained about 40 cars, and so he donated the cars, the property, and an endowment, and created a nonprofit foundation to operate the museum. And so this was the very first building that people came to. Years ago, the museum was only open on Sunday afternoons, and now we're open May through October. And instead of 35 or 40 cars, we've got over 200 on display, and we have about 275 total in the collections. Public Enemies is the new movie that's starring Johnny Depp and Christian Bale, and when that first came out on July 1st, we decided, it's kind of a fascinating time period in history, that whole gangster era, and Public Enemies pretty much follows the life of John Dillinger, who was public enemy number 1. But that whole era also was the birth of the FBI. It was the birth of modern police investigation, and cars played such a role in it. In fact, the way I guess I look at it is, what made that different than like the Wild West were the cars. As a great example, Babyface Nelson's very first bank robbery was in Grand Haven, and that was in the time frame before the FBI had any jurisdiction over bank robbery. So you could hop in a car and drive across state line or drive out of the county and you're scot-free. So what we did is we went through and selected cars from the time period that would be cars that maybe the police would work with, or cars that a gangster was known to have stolen, or cars that maybe you'd see on the street, or a favorite of the gangsters. And we went through and we put a little exhibit together, tied some history to it, and then brought in some artifacts. So we have on display a 1925 Tommy gun. We have 1911 45 automatic pistols, original John Dillinger wanted poster. All those things are on display, just to tie into that, because I know that people go to the movie, they're going to be interested, they want to know more, and we wanted to show them the connection. Here at the museum, we don't have any cars that were owned by gangsters, but we do have a 1929 Lincoln that was owned by the Detroit Police Commissioner. We have cars that are identical to what Bonnie and Clyde would use. In fact, Clyde Barrow wrote a letter to Ford Motor Company saying, "I love your new Ford V8. It's a dandy of a car. I drive one anytime and get away with one." And so we wanted people to see that time of history, how it relates, not just from a history book, but that you'd actually come see cars and go, "Oh, so they stole a car just like that," or the police used a car like that. In fact, the 30 Packard beside us looks pretty fancy, but in reality, we know that Dillinger, in one of their big bank robberies, used a car just like this because he had 6 guys, and that would fit all 6 guys, and their loot and their guns. And so we've done some research and put a little flyer together, just to make it one more thing that people can walk away with, knowing kind of more of a local connection. Well, this is our 1941 diner, and all the beverages that we serve come in these nostalgic glass bottles. So we've got beverages you probably have not heard of, or if you've heard of them, you've not seen them in a long time, but we've got a cream soda, we have Orange Crush in the glass bottle, obviously Coca-Cola in the glass bottle, but one of the more unique ones is the Green River that I don't think most people would probably even remember. It was an old fountain pop. But the diner is 1941, and it came from Meridian, Connecticut, and obviously they serve lunch out of here, and it gets pretty busy. These diners, when they made them, a lot of times people think they're a diner car from a train. They're not. They're designed to look like that, but you would buy this diner, they'd haul it in and plop it on your property, and you'd plug in your water and your electric, and you're ready to go to business, because when they delivered it, they delivered all your silverware, all your plates, everything you needed to start to go in business. So it was a self-contained unit. You just hooked up the water and electric and went into business. This one here was parked in front of a factory and opened in 1941 as Joe's Diner, and years later became the Blue Moon Diner. And then in about 1997, the factory that it was in front of closed. So the diner lost a good chunk of its business and sat there empty for a couple years. And then the museum found out about it, and we acquired it and had it restored and brought in 2004 is when we opened. Everything on the inside of it's pretty much original. The tile, the seats, everything. Pretty unique. It's when you think of a diner, a lot of times you think of them from the 50s, where it's got the stainless steel on the outside, and this one is actually smaller than that, because when they first came out, they were like this one, where it's a porcelain steel panels and not the stainless steel. But you can tell that just by looking at them, you can tell they have a really good pecan pie. I eat that a lot. Quite a good mix of cars in this building. We've got cars that were $550 car, designed for your farmer, big high wheel buggy with a motor in it, or a $6,000 car that has a spot for your chauffeur and a mechanic to ride with you. So it's a completely different market. Also in this building we've got 1912 Cadillac. It's the lowest mileage original Cadillac in existence, but what's significant about it is that it's the first year for the electric starter. Before that you had to crank start your cars. Stanley Steamer right here behind me. And some of the other cars in here that are pretty impressive or notable cars would be have the Dodge brothers' very last two cars. Both John and Horace Dodge died in 1919, and we have both of their very last cars on display here. And of course we have the Model T. Everybody thinks of the Model T as the everyman car. It was a car that Henry Ford introduced in 1908 that gave everybody else the run for the money. They produced that car for 1908 to 1927 with very few changes, and kept dropping the price on it. And that's the car, when you hear about it, people say, hey, you can get it any color you want as long as it's black. And that was something Henry Ford did in 1913. He gave everybody on his assembly line a raise. They got $5 a day. But the way they did that is to produce more vehicles, they cut all the extras. So they weren't going to offer you paint colors or brass or whatever. You were just getting a plain black car. So that's where Henry Ford said, any color you want as long as it's black.